Oh, that's great. And we are live. Good morning, everybody. I'm Nadine Parry. I'm an executive and leadership coach, and I'm delighted today to welcome a very special guest, Tracy Sinclair. Good morning, Tracy.
Good morning, Nadine, and good morning, everyone else.
Tracy, I'm really delighted to have you as my guest today, because I was looking at my email and our journey started back in 2017. And I remember talking at that point to my own coach, Linley Rose, as I left my headship at that point. And I said to Linley, I want to train to become a coach. And she referred me to you. And that's back in 2017. And since then, you've actually traveled with me. You've made me who I am today, and you've shaped me. So I want to start this conversation by really thanking you for all the amazing work that you are doing in the world of coaching.
Wow, thank you very much. That's very kind of you to say. And I'm a firm believer that we create these things together. I know that sounds like a terrible cliche, but I think it's true. You know, it's not a one-way process. So I think when people connect and support each other's development, then, you know, good things happen.
Thank you, Tracy. So Tracy, you're a corporate executive coach. You are a mentor, you're a supervisor, you sit on the ICF board. You've written a book, Becoming a Coach, which is a great book. And you say, I love to work with individuals, organizations, and teams who want to be at their best and who want to reach their fullest potential. I love that. And we're going to talk about it, but I think it's a nice way to talk about high quality coaching, because straight away you're pitching it very high, and that's who Tracy Sinclair is, and that's what I love.
Thank you. Thank you.
What else would you like to share with us about you?
Well, I guess as you can tell by what you've just shared regarding the type of work I do, it's coaching figures quite a lot in it. And I think that is because I am truly passionate about the impact that coaching can have in many settings. So I think part of why I do the work I do is because I believe so passionately in it, and I therefore love it. You know, it is almost a labour of love in a way. But I also have a life outside of coaching as well. One might not always think so, but I do have a life outside of coaching. And I've got not young children now. Gosh, they're 17. That still seems young compared to me. But I have twins who are 17, and you know, going through all of the challenges that young people are experiencing at the moment. So there's a lot of my energy on that. And yes, just, can I say, enjoying lockdown? Not too sure about that, but getting through this experience probably like most of the rest of the world.
Okay. So I want to start talking about this book, right? What made you decide to co-author and to actually write this book? Because I mean, this is a huge, you know, achievement, about 330 pages. Takes a long time to write something like that. So what was the beginning of the story of writing this book?
Well, the beginning was actually Jonathan Passmore, who is you know, a great and prolific author, having authored many papers and articles and books associated with coaching. And I met Jonathan when I had the privilege to be the chair of the Global ICF board, and I was at the Henley Regatta, actually, where I was able to give Henley Business School their ICF accredited certificate for their training program. And I got talking with Jonathan, and after that he asked me if I would co-author the book with him, to and particularly focus on, you know, the area of the ICF core competencies. And that was really where it started. So you know, I suppose there is that saying that everyone's got a book in them. And that happened to be my one, I suppose. So it just sort of went from there, really. And that
how long did it take you to write this book?
Too long. A long time. I actually wrote it almost twice because I started to write it in alignment with the previous, or the current, if you like, core competency model. But knowing then that the updated model was in the pipeline, there seemed little point in bringing a book to market that would effectively have a very limited interest and shelf life. And so we put things on hold for a little while, and then I got very busily rewriting and reconfiguring and researching to produce a new book. So a long time, and it's not just the writing. As anyone who's ever written a book will know, the editing process is often longer than the writing process. So I dare to count how many hours.
And I know, Tracy, I mean, I've watched some interviews and some posts on LinkedIn. I know that you feel very strongly about the world of coaching, in that there are a lot of people who are calling themselves a coach without the qualification. I mean, there is a surge of those people on different platforms. And you feel very strongly about ICF and the need to go through proper qualification, proper training, because people seem to think that coaching is just about asking questions.
Absolutely. Yeah, you know, I guess this idea, I suppose it stems really from the fact that coaching is still largely an unregulated profession, or self-regulated is probably the better term. And there are good and bad things about that. You know, the good thing about it is that because it's a young profession still, relatively speaking, it's, you know, once you regulate something, you tend to baseline it or fix it. And that probably would impact or limit the creativity that the whole concept of coaching is still going through. But at the same time, the downside is that you can get literally anyone printing a business card and saying, I'm a coach, and perhaps charging significant money for that. So I do think there is something about the need, therefore, for professionalism and integrity and standards and ethics and all of those things. I think it's hugely important. And I do believe that a lot of that is market driven, and that's where part of the self-regulation comes, I think, in that the buyers and the users of coaching are now so much more informed and are starting to have an expectation of a certain level of these things like professionalism, etc. So I think the role of professional bodies in the profession is very, very important. Personally, of course, I'm aligned to the ICF, but you know, other professional bodies are also seeking to do great work and to play a really important role. So I think it's about choosing the right professional body for you. I happen to be very embedded in the ICF because I believe in what they're doing, and love the fact that they're truly global and very wide-reaching. You know, so. But I do think it's very important, and I would encourage anyone that, you know, especially with the way things are going now in the world, where a lot of people are retraining, perhaps transitioning out of jobs either voluntarily or not, and thinking of coaching, which is wonderful. I think it is important to seek good training, accredited training, and get some kind of formal qualification in order to be perceived as credible in the marketplace. And be credible, not just be perceived as credible, but be credible.
Yeah, it's interesting what you say, because recently I was talking to 2 potential clients who actually asked me about my qualifications, whereas in the past they wouldn't necessarily ask. But recently I've had 2 clients saying, so what are your qualifications? When did you take your qualification? So it's actually good that we're being asked the good questions. I was really pleased to be asked. Tracy, you mentioned ICF. Do you want to talk to us briefly about your influence and how you are shaping the world of coaching with ICF. What's your role in ICF?
Well, I don't know quite how much I'm shaping and influencing, but of course, all of us who are volunteers for the ICF are trying to contribute to that in some way. But I've been volunteering for the ICF as it is a membership body. Everyone, apart from our staff team, who are wonderful, based around the world, everyone is a volunteer. And I've been volunteering for over 10 years now. And I've sort of taken on all sorts of different roles because I think the variety is great. So I started out with the UK chapter, which is a great chapter, very well established, offering really good value into the UK community and beyond. And then I've also worked in some EMEA groups and things like that. And then since 2016, I've been on the global board. So currently I'm sitting as a director at large on the ICFGE, which is, I guess in effect, the overarching global board. And really we're trying to influence in several ways, really. First of all, influence the profession, by establishing really high standards for qualifications and credentials for coaches, also high standards for coach training programs, and high standards around professionalism and ethics. So I think, one of the things that the ICF is well known for is that gold standard. And that's something that we're proud of, very proud of, and seeking to maintain, so that anyone that goes through that time and energy and financial investment into becoming a coach can actually be proud of the credential that they have. So there's a lot of work that we do in that, a lot of work in looking at how can coaching have the most positive impact. The ICF's vision is that coaching is an integral part of a thriving society. And wow, the world isn't exactly thriving at the moment. So, it's really looking at how can we have the farthest reach to impact everyone through coaching, not just those who have easy access to it. So we're really looking at all of these ways of strategies for how to bring coaching into organisations, how to have social impact, how to maintain standards, and also to how to be innovative. So we have a Thought Leadership Institute as well to really look at, what's next. It's very exciting. Where will coaching and the marketplace or the environment for coaching actually go next?
I was looking actually at the website recently, and particularly the Thought Leadership, and I was wondering myself, where is coaching going next with artificial intelligence, and who knows? We might just I don't know. We might just not exist at some point anymore. It might just be machines. I mean, who knows? But that's indeed an interesting way to explore what the future is going to be like for coaching, and also how the pandemic will shape the kind of coach that we become ourselves, aren't we? Because I think the pandemic has thrown so many things to us as coach that we've not been used to necessarily deal with. I mean, emotions are very high. And sometimes in conversations, I mean, certainly with mine, I hear new things that I've not heard in the past, for which I've not necessarily always. It's not a question of training, but it's the experience, isn't it? Oh, that's new actually. And how is the world of coaching going to deal with that? Do you feel that as well? Do you see that?
Yes, definitely, absolutely. And just staying with the ICF for a moment, in case it's of interest to people, the ICF has been doing some research with PwC, for a long time, but particularly around COVID. And there's another touch point. There was a piece of research done when COVID sort of first hit last year, and there's another repeat touch point to really look at specifically what you're saying around what is the impact of a pandemic on coaches, coaching, and people who maybe would benefit from coaching? I think it's a mixed bag, if you like, in a way. In the one hand, there's a sense of the market being hit a little bit because people either don't have the finances at the moment to pay for coaching because they've lost their jobs or whatever, or don't have the time because they are so up against what they're trying to do. But on the flip side, there's a huge opportunity because probably coaching is more needed now than ever before. And, you know, I think within every dark cloud, if you like, there's got to be some gem of opportunity. And I think that the profession of coaching's opportunity is now, you know, is really to say, wow, this is something that really the world needs on all levels, So I think it's a question of how do we tap into that opportunity to really bring coaching and the benefits of coaching to as many people as possible so that we can meet that wave almost and, you know, I guess really in simple terms, help people to maintain and build back resilience and sustainability of what they're trying to do.
And ICF has sent a survey recently. I mean, I've received a link actually to complete, a personalized survey to complete, to help ICF gather evidence from us. And I think it's really important that we ask all members to complete that survey, because the more the better and the more reliable the findings will be.
Definitely.
Yeah. Tracy, we talk a lot about niching in coaching, and I remember starting my career and being told by everybody, particularly business mentors, not business coaches, but business mentors, saying, you know, you've got to niche, you've got to be specific about who is your ideal client, and I've struggled a little bit with that, because sometimes clients have all kinds of background and issues that they want to bring to the table. So I was wondering what your thoughts were on niching.
Yeah, it's an interesting question, and I mean, I can't stand here and claim to be a marketing specialist. So a marketing specialist might give different advice here, but I've got interesting views on that. To me, the niche is you're working with a human being. That's the niche. And so whether that human being works in the financial sector or is a young parent or a single mother or someone transitioning into retirement, or, you know, whatever context they have or are in, they're a human being. And so I think primarily I see the niche as we're working with people to bring an element of our coaching capability in service of supporting that human being. And it's back to that idea of potential again. I think this idea of niching is perhaps more of a marketing lens, and I'm not undermining the importance or significance of that, because what we do need to have, I think, is some kind of differentiator. You know, why would someone hire you or I over someone else over there? So that's where I go with it, is I try to think about, what does someone get when they work with me? What's my way of working? And so personally, I've never, niched. I've never niched. I've worked with all sorts of different sizes of organizations, different industries, different sectors, different age groups. I mean, I just like working with people. And then I try to bring that sense of, okay, here's a human being. And what's their context, because they will also be niched, won't they? They will be completely different from the next client. So maybe a little bit of a curveball idea, but I don't tend to think of it in that way.
Yeah, I'm pleased that you say that, because when I was, looking at niching, I was struggling because clients are very different. They come with their with their own story, their own background, their own context, in their own culture at times. And when I was looking at my clients, there's no, I wouldn't say I'm niching. I'm like you, I'm working with individuals of all ages, from all over the world, so different culture, from all industries. So I'm not niching with a particular industry. I guess what's important for me, it's the impact that we are having as a coach, isn't it? I mean, ultimately, we're here to make a difference, aren't we? Because we want to get the best of people.
Mm.
And that's the gift of how we do it.
Mm. Absolutely. Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. And, in some ways, what was just occurring to me, and this is probably even more contentious, but is in some ways, this idea of niching is almost putting limitations on something.
Yeah.
Of specializing, and potentially the risk with that, I think, is that you go into this place of perhaps starting to become, or think you're becoming, a bit of a subject matter expert in that niche. I just work with young female leaders or something. Whatever your niche, you decide your niche to be, and then could that get us into the risk of going to that place of knowing?
Yeah.
Going to that place of assuming, going to that place of having perspectives, views, biases, which of course we're taught, hopefully, not to have. So I just notice myself resisting the idea, really.
Yeah, and I mean, as a coach, and particularly, I remember at the beginning of my official qualified career as a coach, I remember feeling quite torn between being a coach and a mentor. And the more you, in my view, the more you niche, the more you're at risk, actually, of being drawn into becoming a mentor.
Yeah, definitely. And this navigating those hats, which many of us do, if we wear both of those hats potentially, is an important thing to do, isn't it? It's very, both ways of working add enormous value potentially. But it is important to have that clarity so that you're working in a way that is congruent with what your client needs. And so I agree, niching to me says I have subject matter expertise in this area. That's how I equate to it. So, once again, I'm not challenging anyone that does that, because we have to go where our energy goes, don't we? We have to work with, or want to work with people or communities, groups, etc., where we feel drawn to. Completely understand that. And I just think we then need to take care. Am I staying as open as possible, or is this putting some kind of a limitation on me and how I work and who I work with?
And it's also you and I, when we were analyzing one of my coaching conversation as part of my ACC, and I remember us talking about a style of coaching. To some extent we all develop a style of coaching, but for me the danger as well is to be stuck in a specific style. So I think it's really important to constantly challenge yourself to not be stuck in a coaching style as you are stuck in a teaching style, for example, or a working style. Would you agree with that when you talk about having an open mind? And
oh, completely. I mean, and you've only got to look at the competency model. It's there in almost every competency. If you look at words like client-centered, open, flexible, adaptable, comfortable with not knowing. I mean, it's this message of keeping ourselves open to our own learning, to what's possible, to the impact of our context on ourselves and others. It's there over and over again. So yes, it's an interesting balance, isn't it? Between, on the one hand, we do talk about boundaries in coaching, which of course are really important. but at the same time having this openness. So there's often, I think there's quite a lot of paradoxes in coaching that we have to somehow hold. And, you know, I guess that's the skill, isn't it, that we're trying to develop.
I want to ask you a question about optimal human condition, because this is something that that you talk about. You're passionate about exploring and understanding optimal human condition. What's the optimal human condition? How do you define that?
Yeah, well, I guess the way I would first define it is by saying what it isn't, which is it's not perfectionism. And as a recovering perfectionist, I want to be quite clear about that. For me, when I first started learning and training as a coach, I was really struck by a very simple concept by Tim Galway in his book, The Inner Game of Tennis, with this idea of P equals P minus I, performance equals potential minus interference. And of all the different things, models and theories that I've learned since, I love that one. And it just really has engaged me. And in fact, my very first coaching business was called Discover Your Potential. So this idea of potential has always been there with me, even, you know, before I joined the ICF. And potential is in the ICF's definition of coaching, you know, that clients can maximise their personal and professional potential. So for me, the optimal human condition is about supporting someone to tap into their best potential in that moment, not knowing that our performance is influenced by the interference that sort of undermines our potential. So how can we almost be, I don't know, interference consultants? You know, how could we work with people to look at, you know, if you go with Tim Galway's presumption that our potential is always at 100%, our potential to perform is always at 100%, then how can we find a way in that day, in that moment, around that topic to tap into that and somehow clear the mist of what's getting in the way and actually find it, because it's there. You know, we work with that belief, don't we, that our clients are creative, resourceful and whole. So the question is, we know it's there, we just need to find it. That's what it's about for me. It's the optimal human condition is, can I learn ways to more effectively tap into my best self more often, knowing that we're not perfect, and some days we will and some days we won't.
So it's the aha moment of a coaching conversation where the coachee gets something. It's that, you know, you see it in their look, in the way they look at you, or in what they say. It's that illuminating moment where they get it.
Absolutely, and which of course is a joy, isn't it? You know, yes. That's a joy to witness. And what I'm also reminded of as well there, Nadine, is that sometimes we don't see that aha moment because the client has it later on. I remember a great lesson taught by one of my teachers of coaching years ago was that the real work happens in between. You know, so it's back to us being comfortable with not knowing again, isn't it? How do we trust that our client is doing that work, that process is happening, because that aha moment might happen in the shower the next morning or something, rather than when we're with them. But yes, you know, I think it is about those insights, isn't it?
Yeah, that build moment.
Yeah.
You talk about, you say, transformational positive change and learning is achieved through a conversation that results in thinking and acting differently. I will have that conversation with you. That's what you put on your website. What are the ingredients for a conversation to be transformational?
Well, I think there's a few things come to mind, but first of all, I think one of the most important things are are the environment. So, you know, this concept of trust and safety. And if we look back to, you know, psychological theories and coaching psychology, there's this idea of the conditions, the optimal conditions for the client to do their work. So I think first and foremost, that's got to be a foundational element, is how do we create this environment that is safe, that is open, that is exploratory, so that the person can actually have half a chance, you know, to tap into that. I think that's the first thing. And that comes with linked then with this belief that our clients are creative, resourceful and whole, that they have what some psychologists call a self-correcting reflex, you know, that we are able usually to work most things out. We just need the time and the space and a little bit of, you know, safety and maybe a little bit of thought provocation. So that's when I think these, you know, this idea of all coaches do is ask questions comes in, but, you know, well-placed questions, thought-provoking questions. But also the time, you know, if you go back to sort of lovely work like Time to Think by Nancy Klein, which I think is linked to this optimal environment piece, is that our work is light touch, is that we don't try to add too much value, that we actually respect and trust that this person can do this work with a bit of light touch. So I think it's around, you know, the safety of the environment, the conditions for success, the time and the space for them to actually do what they need to do, with a light touch from the coach that really is just inviting and evoking. I mean, in the competence we talk about evoking awareness, don't we? To evoke that next layer of thinking. That's where the transformational question takes me.
And you and I actually worked on the new ICF competencies. You trained me on those. What are your thoughts on those new ICF competencies?
I really like the new model. I think it's excellent. I think it's a big improvement on the previous one. Not in terms of the actual content, because the research indicated that the concepts in the previous current model still stand, you know. So fundamentally, the issue is, I think, here is that the competencies have not changed. It's not as though we've suddenly realised that coaching competencies are different to what we thought they were. They're very fundamentally the same. But what I really like about the new version of the model is that it's articulated in a much clearer, cohesive and consistent way. I think the way the competencies are clustered and structured, it reads better. You know, it's articulated in a much better way, bearing in mind also that it then needs to be and is being translated into many different languages. And so it's not about words, it's about meaning of those words, which I think is a conversation you and I might have had before, actually, if I recall. But also it has brought in, it is a reflection of the status of coaching today. You know, going back to what we said about coaching being a new and still evolving profession, how coaching is utilised and therefore the competencies of coaching are also evolving. And so I think this updated version, this updated model really does give us a snapshot of what are the skills that are needed for coaching today. And so it's introduced a new competency 2, embodies a coaching mindset, which I think is a wonderful addition, hugely important for many reasons. I could talk for ages about that. But it's also introduced other concepts. You know, the idea of client context is much more underscored, and inclusivity, diversity, being client-centered, depth of contracting. So there are just some lovely new pieces that have been highlighted or underscored more. So all in all, I'm really happy with it, and so have most people I've worked with. I've not come across many. I've done quite a lot of webinars around the new model and worked with people on it, training now with it, etc. But most people are very happy with it. Sometimes there are a few pieces that people were very attached to in the wording, but they're often around turns of phrase that where the meaning is still embedded in there, but just the phraseology has changed a little bit. But yeah.
What I like about training as a coach is constantly checking how I am doing as a coach in terms of the competencies. And one of the exercises that we do when we train as coach, which probably many people don't realize, is that we have to analyze some conversations, 30 minutes conversation, and check in with the competencies. And many people won't know that, what we do behind the scene. But actually that work I've done with you, where we analyze a 30 minutes conversation and we check against core competencies and how we're doing, and are we specializing in a competence, or are we ticking them all? Do we have to tick them all? I have found that to be such a great exercise to reflect on where I am as a coach and where perhaps I need to be. It has been such a powerful mentoring session when I've worked with you and when we've done that, because it's been a great check-in for me. I think as a coach, it's important to constantly reflect on what we do to do even better.
Yeah, definitely. Well, excuse me. This new competency too embodies a coaching mindset, really specifically says in there, doesn't it, that coaches really need to develop an ongoing reflective practice. And of course, mentor coaching is a form of reflective practice, a really, really valuable form. And I smile because I do such a lot of mentoring, and almost consistently people come into that process a little bit nervous and a bit sort of hesitant about it because of the fact that we're going to be listening to recording. And of course, who likes listening to themselves on a recording? We just don't, do we? But once you get over that, I can almost say categorically, I don't know that I've ever had anyone finish their mentoring process and then not say, wow, that was actually really, really good to do that. So I think I love it. I think it's great to be able to listen to your work and not just talk about it in theory, but to really listen to the work and with the best of positive intention, look at what's there, what's not there, what could there be more of, less of, differently. And I think it really does help, which I think obviously is the purpose, to deepen our understanding of those competencies and how we coach to them. I think the one handle with care label I would put on it, which I say to all coaches when they're doing their mentoring, is during our mentoring process, we get really nitty gritty and technical and pour over those competencies and the markers. However, when we're in front of our clients, we need to completely put them away, because otherwise, sometimes coaches can have that running in their head. They're in a dialogue. I need to do more competency 6, or have I contracted enough? And of course, that's not going to be helpful. So it's that challenging thing of really, really focusing on it when you're doing the mentoring, and then when you're with your client, completely letting it go and trusting that they'll come through.
I've thoroughly enjoyed having those discussions with you, actually, about my own recorded conversation, because you always offer a perspective that I don't necessarily have on what I do. And it's you will see things in a conversation that perhaps I don't see because I'm in it at the time. And And when we do that analysis, you always start by, so what are the, what do you think you've done well, and where are the things that we could improve. And it's quite interesting actually at times where you or I think I need to improve on something, and then you might say, well, actually I do think you've done it. So it's also important that coaches constantly use those competencies to understand them even better, isn't it? Because there's quite a lot of them. So we need to, we need to make sure that we constantly understand them so that our conversation reflect that, but without becoming prisoner of those competencies when we talk to our clients, isn't it? Because it's easy to say, oh, I've not done competency 3. I've got to do something about it now. So let's just change the conversation and bring that back, which is not at all the way we want coaching to be.
Yeah.
So it's about becoming organic and knowing what they are, but the work of training is done separately than when we have those coaching conversations. Tracy, I want to talk about the type of conflicts, because I have I would say a passion. People may think it's sad, but I'm very interested in conflict management and difficult conversations. I've actually got a talk later on with a potential PhD supervisor. You know that I'm keen to do my PhD, so today is hopefully the day when we're going to agree on the title, hopefully. Yeah, and I do want to bring the element of coaching in the conversation. Actually, my PhD is probably going to look at the role of emotions on the impact of managing a difficult conversation. So particularly looking at emotions like the role of hope. Because a difficult conversation might be doomed from the beginning, depending on the emotions that you have. So I've got some hypotheses in my head. But how do you think, because I want to use coaching in my PhD, right? I think there is a lot I could tap in. How do you think that coaching could possibly impact positively on difficult conversations?
Well, I mean, first of all, your PhD sounds fascinating, Nadine. So wishing you lots of success with that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think coaching plays a great role in terms of, managing conflict or difficult situations. And the first things that come to mind is self-awareness, so we talk a lot about being non-judgmental, when you're contracting with each other in a group, let's not be judgmental. And of course, we know that as human beings, we're wired to be judgmental. So it's not about not being judgmental, it's about being aware of the judgments that we might make and are they helpful. So self-awareness already immediately comes into my mind, that through coaching, we become more self-aware. A little bit like you were just saying with the debriefing process for a recording in mentor coaching, that together we step back and we reflect and we notice things that we didn't notice in the moment. And I think with coaching, it's the same invitation to the client, it's reflective practice, isn't it, for them? So self-awareness, I think, is really important in managing difficult conversations, because then I can be more aware, hopefully, if we think of, I don't know, something like Johari window, my blind spot hopefully gets reduced a little bit, and what's open is increased. And with that self-awareness comes more option, doesn't it? More choice, more variety of perspectives. But then the other part of coaching is we invite, through these powerful questions, we invite clients to consider other perspectives than their own, don't we? What would this be like in someone else's shoes? Or what would this be like if you were a fly on the wall? Or what would this be like in 6 months' time? We're inviting people out of the confines that they're putting around that particular situation. And I'm unlike you, I'm not a specialist as such in conflict management and those kinds of conversations. But, one of the things that I think contribute to those conversations is those emotions that you were saying. And some of those emotional responses are coming from thoughts, values, beliefs, biases, opinions that are triggering an emotional response that is then taken into that conversation. So I think that coaching has got to be helpful for that, hasn't it? To actually step back and say, what's really going on here? And what are going back to the optimal human condition, what would be the optimal emotion or optimal mindset that I could take into that conversation so that it's less difficult?
Oh, I love that. I could talk to you for hours, Tracy. I want to ask you a question about Marshall Goldsmith, because you're one of the leading global coaches winner of the Thinking 50 Marshall Goldsmith Award 2019. What does that mean for yourself, for your clients? Because that's quite amazing.
Thank you. Well, I mean, yes, I'm very honoured to have been identified and as one of those coaches, and to have to receive that award. I also noticed that I'm not a part of me. Not resist it. I don't resist it, because that I'm very honoured to have that. But I'm not one of these people that seeks to collect awards. It's more about just trying to do the work that we're doing, I think. But what it does mean is it's given me access to a fabulous group of people, because there are 50 of these people and more in that community. And Marshall Goldsmith does some fantastic work, in coaching around the world in many ways. So it's wonderful to have access to colleagues and potential colleagues and some great professionals who are doing things around the world that I could, perhaps be part of, that I could contribute to, that we're a community where you can exchange resources and ideas. And that's the bit that I find is most useful, really, is to be part of. I think one of the things that coaches often report they struggle with is a sense of, some even say isolation, but that sense of we're lone rangers out there in the wild trying to do our thing. And of course, we're plugged into different groups and organisations and things. But I think if you can be part of something that you feel is a movement towards making a difference, that's a good place to be. Because it's hard to fight those battles on your own, isn't it? It's hard to change the world on your own. But collectively, we can.
Do you have a final message for this LinkedIn Live to leave with, the 706 million users of LinkedIn?
Oh, wow. Wouldn't it be cool if they were all listening now? Okay, people of the world. Well, there's a little story that I like to tell, and I know it sounds a little bit evangelical, but I'm going to tell it anyway, because it is what drives me. And it's that when I first got into coaching, it was because I'd gone to a conference, because I'd just had my children, and I've got twins, and I was looking to sort of refresh my business offering when I came back into my business after taking some time out for them. And I happened to be at a conference, and a gentleman was talking about coaching, and I thought, oh, okay, what's this thing all about? And he basically said that coaching was not created in a coffee shop one day by a few bored people scratching their heads, wondering what to invent or do next. He said that he believed that coaching was created, was evolved, almost, not created, I don't think was the word he used, but evolved and emerged to meet a human need in the world. And I was just so hooked by that. I thought, wow, that's big. And that was it. I was off looking for my coach training program. And over time, and especially more than ever before with what we've got going on in our world, and not just with COVID, and it's very easy to hang everything on COVID.
Yeah.
There are many other things. I think coaching has a really, really useful role to play.
Beautiful. Thank you very much. Tracy, if our 706 million users of LinkedIn want to connect with you, I mean, where can they find you?
Well, I'm on LinkedIn, Tracy Sinclair, and my business, Tracy Sinclair Limited, it's very easy, is on LinkedIn. And my website is tracysinclair.com. So I'd love to hear from anyone who wants to do something with coaching.
That's great. And I can vouch that you're an amazing person to work with. And I continue to work with you and to learn so much from you. And I thank you for that, Tracy. Thank you very much for being my great guest today. I love talking to you. I could go on for hours, but I know that we've got to move on today. But thank you, Tracy. Really, thank you very much.
Thank you. It's been such a delight. Really enjoyed our conversation. Thanks a lot.